What is going on, squad? In this one, we have a very special podcast episode with the one and only Edwin Dorsey, founder of the Bear Cave newsletter. Some call him the best researcher in short selling. So, for myself, as a finance nerd, investing geek, this is like meeting Justin Bieber right here. So, Edwin, just for context, can we get a little bit of your origin story before we kind of kick it off?
Gabrielle, I do a lot of podcasts, and that was the kindest introduction I've ever been given. So
Appreciate that.
thank you so much for that. That is high praise. Yeah, so I've been passionate about stock markets from a really young age. Second grade, I was all into stocks and researching them.
Yeah,
Freshman year of college is when I made the transition to the short side. I started interning at a short only hedge fund called Sophos, where I interned on and off all 4 years of college.
sweet.
I even did a stint in the SEC enforcement division, which was a lot of fun, and got some notoriety for criticizing companies while I was a college student. Then, my senior year of college, I started the Bear Cave newsletter, really as a way to follow all the activist short sellers and keep up with the news in the short selling space. That newsletter took off during the pandemic and quickly became my full-time job. So for the last 5 years, my full-time job has been writing this newsletter where I summarize activist short reports, highlight suspicious executive resignations, and do some investigative work of my own for my paid readers.
That's amazing. And like to that point, I saw a recent podcast of yours where you said you got into stocks at second grade, which is like Warren Buffett type level of like early start. What was the thing that actually got you investing that early on? Because for myself, I started researching stocks when I was like 18, 19, but I'm just like curious, what got you into it so early on?
There's a quote I love, which is, "You don't choose your passions choose you." And I don't know what exactly drew me to it. I always like numbers and money a little. I loved researching and digging in. One of the big lucky breaks I got is when my grandmother saw my passion for investing in this research. She put some real money in an E-Trade account. She didn't give me the money, but she gave me the username and password so I could invest it on her behalf. And being a third grader with access to $10,000, it was
Oh yeah,
insane. I thought I was the smartest kid, coolest kid in the world. So
for
that
sure.
that really, helped amplify my passion when I was really
For
young, when you
sure.
got
That's
real money to
amazing.
play with.
Shout out to grandma. So to that point about like short selling, for most individuals, maybe they've seen the movie The Big Short. That's kind of like the only perspective they have on it. For a general definition, like what is shorting the stock, just for context for the audience to kind of get what you do specifically?
Yeah, so shorting is a way of betting against a company.
Mhm,
The way it mechanically works is you find somebody who owns shares of a stock, let's say it's trading at 100, you
mhm.
borrow it for that from them, and then you sell it, and now you owe them the stock. So you sell it at 100, and then you're going to buy it back at a later date to return their stock. And hopefully it falls. So if it goes from 100 to 80, you sold it at 100, you buy it back a week later at 80, and you pocket the difference, you give him his share back, and maybe you give them a little bit of a fee for the inconvenience of borrowing their share. That's kind of mechanically how it works. It's important to note, though, even though a lot of short sellers read the Bear Cave newsletter, I don't short the stocks myself. I only make money from reader subscriptions. So a lot of short sellers want to read my research into companies and my opinions, but I'm not shorting the companies myself.
Right, that makes sense. I mean, statistically, the market's always going up, and whether that's because of debasement of currency, we get into that later. But primarily, most people are kind of better off maybe investing in some sort of like S&P 500 index fund versus
Yeah.
trying to time and short stocks because there's infinite upside. No, there's infinite downside with shorting because the price can continuously rise. And I think sometimes beginners don't kind of like realize that piece. Now going like towards your newsletter, right? It's one of the biggest in the world. When I was looking into your research, how methodical you are with this, there was one piece that I learned from you, and it's actually digging into not only the public statements within these companies' financial statements, but something known as the Freedom of Information Act. Like you tap into this very well. Can you articulate what this is exactly?
Yeah. Great point. So FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, is a set of laws that give US citizens the right to get records from government agencies. The way FOIA is traditionally used is journalists use it a ton to get records from the government.
Okay.
You know, you go to some politician and the New York Times says, well, give us all your emails on this date. We want to uncover a scandal, or give us your report you formalized in your office on this topic. The way I've used FOIA, which is somewhat atypical, is I go to a lot of state level regulators and the FTC, and I file FOIA requests for consumer complaints people have filed against businesses, with the idea being if consumers are complaining a lot, that can be a leading indicator that your company is not going to do well in the future. So I'm really good at using the Freedom of Information Act to go to state attorney generals or the FTC and get hundreds and hundreds of consumer complaints people file against businesses. And this is a core part of my research process that lets me get an edge over Wall Street, which tends to be very numbers and quantitative focused.
That's amazing, man. Like I've genuinely seen through the podcast I've seen of you, the determination you have to get the information is insane. Like the story of you being in college and go, I think you went to San Francisco to a hedge fund. They didn't let you in the lobby. The security guard was like, "No, you can't come through." And you started messaging every single individual on LinkedIn to get the results. I was like, "All right, it makes sense why this guy's where he's at." To that point now, like we're diving deeper into the letter, right? The kind of high level exposing bad companies. There's a
Mhm.
recent pod of yours where you talk about China stock scams with like WhatsApp groups manipulating different stocks. I want to kind of dive into this. What's going on here exactly?
Absolutely. So, great question. For a long time, uh, companies in China have listed in the US and then use their stock as a way to cause US investors to lose money.
Yeah,
Historically, what happened 10 years ago is Chinese companies would list and they'd say, we have this much in revenue and this much in profit. And then these activists would go and say, look, the factories are empty. And they'd say, oh, we made up the numbers, and the stock would collapse
yeah,
after they unloaded a lot of stock. Now we're in a renaissance of US listed China stock scams. But the way it operates is a little different, where oftentimes there's these really small companies that will list. If you read their SEC filings, they'll be transparent and say, we have a small amount of revenue, no profits, 8 employees. But what they'll do is they'll spend a lot of money through Facebook and Instagram ads to reach mom and pop investors. These scammers will then convince, these mom and pop investors that they have got some great algorithm or formula for trading stocks. So they'll say, buy Palantir, sell it tomorrow, and hopefully it went up. Buy 2 or 3 legitimate stocks, convince you they're legitimate. And then they'll tell you, buy a ton of this ultra low float micro cap China pump and dump. And they'll convince everybody to buy a ton of this stock at the same time. And then the scammers will unload their shares and they'll have a big
right.
stake in the company at an inflated price on these retail investors who don't know better. And then the stocks can collapse 95% in a day. And this is something we've seen over and over and over on the public markets. It's almost always with companies that have their core operations in Asia that are listed on the NASDAQ. Typically, it's a very low share price, and you'll see it go up, 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 and then down 90% in a day. I'd estimate it's
Really?
causing US investors about $10 billion a year in losses.
And is there anything going on like with regulations that are really like diving into this through your research, or what's happening?
So it's actually an exciting time. For the last 5 years, it seemed like nothing happened. And when you have bad conduct going on that's profitable and there's no oversight, it gets more and more egregious and more
Right.
people do it. Luckily, over the last 6 months, we've actually seen a lot of headway under the Trump administration. I do think they deserve a lot of credit for this because it's really under their administration. They've started to see some of these scammers' accounts. So after the scam unravels, and the scammers try to move their cash overseas, and they'll seize those bank accounts before the cash can be moved. And more recently, we've seen the SEC halt at least a dozen of these ultra low flow China stocks. So once they're getting pumped up, but before they can be dumped, the SEC is just doing kind of an indefinite trading halt on them. And that kind of warns investors and prevents the dump part of the pump and dump. So we've actually seen a lot recently, and I think the Nasdaq has started to say, "Look, we're not going to let these list as easily. We're not going to let so many reverse splits happen. We're going to start having some oversight." So I think we've turned the curve towards, these types of scams are in their end stage now.
And Edwin, is there a reason why it's primarily happening in the Nasdaq versus the New York Stock Exchange? Is there's like kind of some nuance that oversee regulation is not as tight in the Nasdaq, or
I think it's more that the NYSE really cares about their brand and they think it's bad for their brand to have, you know, very small, I don't want to say illegitimate companies, but pump and dump companies, always occurring on the NYSE. So the NASDAQ has, I think, been more open towards listing these. And NASDAQ is willing to list these because they make money. They make money off listing fees, they make money off annual compliance fees, and they make money off the volume. So I
no?
think the better question is, why does NASDAQ even allow it? And the answer, as with many things in life, is it's profitable for them. It causes lots of losses, but it's profitable for them. And I think Facebook deserves a good deal of scrutiny too, because what's really allowed these things to scale is these scammers can spend a ton of money on Facebook to reach
Right,
millions of people. It's not just in the US, it's internationally too. And then they'll almost always be communicating with them in these really big WhatsApp groups.
right, of
One thing I want to show you, Gabriel, if it's okay, is
course.
these scams have actually gotten kind of sophisticated. I joined a lot of these scam groups, and they'd sometimes say they'd ask for you to send confirmations when you make a trade, right? So I make a trade in a legitimate stock, send them a confirmation, send them a confirmation, and they said, you're doing such a great job, Edwin. We want to send you a gift. We want to, reward you. And I'm smart. I'm like, I know you're a scammer. There's no way I'm going to get a gift.
Right.
So they asked my address, and I give them a real address because I know they're not going to send me a gift. And they said, look, we sent you a premium mug in the mail. Let us know when you get it. It didn't arrive in a week. So I was like, it's a scam. And literally, to my amazement, a week and a half after I joined the scam group chat, I literally get a real mug.
No
So this
shot.
is a scam group. They are impersonating a real financial firm. They have their fake website and logo and everything. And they're
Right.
sending me a real mug to try to build legitimacy and make them seem like they're giving good stock advice just to scam people into following an ultimate pump and dump stock pick.
Yeah.
So it's really much more sophisticated thing.
Right, yeah, they're pouring money into buying, physical items, sending it to people to make them feel like, "Oh, this is a legitimate firm that, I'm dealing with." That's actually nuts. So, using the infrastructure, right, like, Facebook seems to be the place where you would say primarily a lot of these individuals are spending a ton in ads and then funneling them to another Facebook application, which is WhatsApp. I've seen something recently, though, that I don't know if it's gotten stricter. On Facebook, whenever I've ran ads before, they have, like, these disclosures of it can be related to, like, specifically financial investments or something along those lines. Maybe it has to do with these stock scams, but I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm just putting that out there. I'm not sure if they're kind of cracking down on this Facebook themselves, or do you feel like they still haven't put enough work to like fix this?
I've been extremely unimpressed with everything. One of the metrics they say that I'm more familiar with is they say we ban a lot of bad actors, and it's true. Sometimes I'll be talking to the scammers, maybe one out of every 10 times, and out of nowhere their account is going to be banned. But literally a minute later, they just message me with the same photo from a different number and say, "Oh, I lost my phone. This is my new number." And it says,
Right.
"Okay, I see the metric Facebook advertises, and then I see how completely ineffective it is." And these ads I've seen, I mean, they are comically, I could just tell right away it's scammy. You're telling me I'm going to make 100% in a stock
Right.
group. I think they need more human oversight. And I think there is an element of, look, we're saying we're doing something, but it financially benefits us. And we don't want to actually solve the problem.
Right. Like you're saying a lot of these companies or market cap are completely unjustified. I don't know if it was like it was it Care. You did an analysis on Care and it was like completely
Yeah.
out of whack. Like it just didn't make sense, the numbers there. Man, but that's kind of scary. There's a lot of individuals that don't invest for that specific reason. Like they don't take the jump to maybe put their money in something that's like an index fund because they hear these stories of, these 17-year-olds driving Bugattis and their friend bought some WhatsApp group, they bought a membership and they got rug pulled. So it's genuinely sad because a lot of people financially are going to be worse off because even if they don't join those groups, they're just not going to understand the markets because they think there's a lot of like smoking mirrors. So we really appreciate your work though, Edwin. We really do. That's super clutch. Thank you so much.
Yes.
The next piece here, and this is we could cut this off, but I saw a post on X where you were talking about the you're talking to an individual that's doing research on what's going on with the gambling, kind of like scandals or sports betting in the NBA right now. Have you been tapped into this, or is this something that you kind of just look at high level?
I heard rumors about this a lot, like well before the indictments happened. I'd heard
Okay,
about these poker games. Someone even invited me to a poker game, and I was like, no, it seems sketchy. You know,
right,
I do think it's gonna grow, these gambling scandals. I think it goes well beyond the NBA. For people I've talked to, NBA games are a little tough to rig, because there's a whole team, and you're not gonna
right.
compromise an entire team. But that's why they did player props with individuals. But then you look at other sports like tennis, for
Mhm,
example, where it is really just one individual who could easily determine whether they want to lose and do it seamlessly. I bet we're going to see a lot more in other sports like that are reliant on more individual. And I think there's probably going to be a lot more to this using poker chips as a way to pay bribes, where I don't think it's just going to be players who get caught up in it. I think you're going to see a lot of other people accept bribes via these poker chips games, because poker chips are a great way to bribe someone because there's no paper trail, there's no taxes,
right.
it's pretty seamless. I do think the scandal here is going to grow, and it's really long overdue.
And then does this scandal affect your research overall high level? I saw you were, doing research on DraftKings. I don't know if you wanna touch up on what you think about DraftKings right now.
I think DraftKings is a fantastic short. So one
Yeah,
of my big, fun passion projects at least is following prediction markets. I'm a huge prediction market fan. I think they're the future. I think they have tremendous societal value. I think they have tremendous market value. I'm a big, big, big believer in prediction markets. And oftentimes when I see innovation, I kind of wonder who's going to be harmed by that. In my newsletter, I've talked a lot about the companies that are going to be harmed by AI, and when it comes to who's going to be harmed by the growth of prediction markets, it's DraftKings. Because largely prediction markets give better odds, better liquidity, and crucially, they don't ban winning bettors. It kind of stinks that on DraftKings, if you start making money consistently, you're going to be kicked off the app. And there's a host of other benefits when it comes to prediction markets, really around distribution, which is DraftKings needs to pay a ton to acquire users, while Kalshi can just partner with Robinhood or whomever and distribute their prediction markets into every interface. So soon we're going to see sports betting everywhere at much better odds, much better liquidity, with no ban on winning bettors. And that world is really harmful to DraftKings. Without even mentioning, prediction markets are offered in every state, and DraftKings is in about half of U.S. states. Prediction markets are 18 plus. DraftKings is 21 plus. There's a host of reasons why prediction markets I think are going to take share, but the biggest is it's a better product with better distribution. Now, to your thing about player props and gambling, compromising players, I think that's also a negative for DraftKings. Now, what some people will say, maybe the first level of thinking is actually DraftKings and the sports books, they have compliance offices and they report this aberrational betting act behavior.
mhm,
So they're the good guys here. And,
right,
there might be some truth to that, but then I think we've seen the leagues come out and say, look, we want really strict low dollar limits on player props. We want to see fewer of them. It's kind of clear that these money making type things are not going to be as much a part of the infrastructure going forward. And I also think when I think about it, prediction markets are actually a better place to have this betting activity, where the worst in terms of transparency is illegal books because no one's monitoring them.
mhm,
A better place is DraftKings because you have some level of monitoring. But if you have it on Polymarket or Kalshi, Polymarket's completely open. You can see the exact account and all the bets they've made. So it's really easy to detect aberrational betting activity because Kalshi and Polymarket have their own internal teams. But more importantly, you have a whole community that monitors the bets of each other. There's already now people who scour Polymarket accounts and detect whales or aberrational betting activity. So when you have it on prediction markets where everybody can see the transactions going on, I think then it's going to be the most transparent, and it's going to be easiest to catch bad actors to the extent props are offered at all. So it's another area where I think prediction markets have an edge over the traditional sports books. One
yeah.
theme I really believe in is pro prediction markets, not so hot on DraftKings.
And besides prediction markets, is there any other vertical that you see artificial intelligence kind of disrupting the profitability of those companies within that vertical?
Yeah, so there's prediction markets, and then kind of separate to that is the growth of AI. The one company I wrote about that I was really proud is Chegg, the homework help company.
Okay.
And now I haven't checked recently, but I think it's down at $1 or something. Because why would a kid pay $20 a month for Chegg when they can just ask ChatGPT to solve their homework
Mhm.
problems?
Yep.
Now I think beyond that, call centers, software companies, business process outsourcers, those companies I think are really going to suffer going forward. I think we're just going to see a lot of call centers be automated, and to the extent it can't be automated, AI will take over some of the initial work. For complex customer service cases, why don't you call? They have an AI agent take all the notes. The notes are summarized, and you have a few highly paid customer service people who like analyze the more complex. I just think the need for humans in customer service is going to be dramatically lowered over time. And then there's a whole subsection of companies, business process outsourcers, that employ lots of people in the developing world, like in the Philippines or India. The teleperformance would be an example.
Mhm.
And if you look at their customer case studies, they say they're really sophisticated, but you look at it and it's, well, like one business process outsourcer I saw said they got 100,000 bank calls that were recorded because
Mhm.
the bank needed to record their calls as part of a regulatory settlement, and they employed people who transcribed the bank calls. And I'm like, this is not going to exist much longer.
Right.
You do not need people. If someone can be paid $3 an hour to do it in the developing world, it seems like that's prime for AI automation. So those are areas that I'm kind of most excited about AI taking over. And then I sometimes, when I go on long walks, I think conceptually longer term what's going to be hurt. And sometimes I think of like an H&R Block that does a lot of tax prep work.
Mhm.
I don't know. Is the average American going to even need an accountant? Can't AI do that soon? It's really just
Right.
applying information to a set of rules, or rules to information. So I think we're going to see a lot upended by AI, but I think there's going to be a lot more wealth created than destroyed.
No, I agree. I mean, I had this one instance about a couple months ago where I spoke to this recruiter about a specific job, and then she was talking about AI. The conversation came up, and she's like, "Oh, like I'm just grateful that I'm always gonna have my job because you can't like talk to a robot." And a week later, I had a separate company I spoke to, completely automated AI. They would take notes, have follow up questions to my responses, and I was like, "Man, this is gonna get crazy." Now, with all that being said, how do you kind of like decipher what to do research on with a lot of disruption occurring in the technology? How do you pick, okay, like this is a specific stock I need to do research on, or this is a different industry I want to tap into? Like, how do you kind of go about that?
So oftentimes it'll kind of flow naturally. Well, I'll get interested in a topic, let's say prediction markets, and then I write about DraftKings, and then maybe I get interested in FanDuel, and then I get interested in their data service providers, and then I kind of explore an industry. Same thing, the AI theme. I do get inbound reader tips. I follow a lot of people on Twitter, and oftentimes, the most recent company I wrote on, literally an account I really like tweeted something about a recent IPO that was overhyped. And I read the tweet and I said, let me look into it. I always like hearing the CEO speak for new interviews. And if the CEO can't make sense or doesn't make sense to me, then I get really interested. So it could come from anywhere and everywhere. I listen to a ton of podcasts. I think uniquely, people like to sit behind their computer and model, where my research process is find a lot of podcasts, find a lot of CEO interviews, and go for a long walk and listen to them. And I might have 10 companies I'm interested in. I'm listening to execs at each of the companies speak, and I'll zero in on two that I think are weak. And by doing this a long time, I kind of have a repository of a lot of companies that have some level of red flags. I think I told you I track a lot of executive resignations. If
Mhm.
I see a lot of resignations, I'll add that to my working list and revisit that at some point in time. So the tips can come from anywhere and everywhere. But I think what differentiates me is I get a breadth of ideas, and then how I research them, whether it's using FOIA or listening to a lot of podcasts on the company, that is kind of atypical too. So weird idea generation and weird research process.
Got it. And going to this point here, you have put in a lot of effort into making connections with investors like Bill Ackman, etc. What was your kind of logic earlier on in doing it? Was it more so thinking information travels through people, or are you trying to work at these firms initially? Like, what was your logic in that first and foremost?
So when I was really young, I did a lot of trying to do a lot of outreach. Where in high school, I sent the letter to every big hedge fund manager, and Bill Ackman was the only one to respond. And then in college, I would cold email a ton of people. And the one thing I was told, which was really true and great advice, is when you're in college, people like to do favors for you. They want to help you. But as soon as you're out of college, you're on your own, kid. It's like,
Right.
hold your own weight. So I was really good at using my college email address to cold email everybody on the West Coast when I was there. When I was in New York City, me and a friend literally would up our alumni database, look at everybody who went to Stanford at the big firms, and just we divide up who would we reach out to. And we just cold emailed everyone. I think we were averaging 100 cold emails a week trying to meet with people, junior year of college. And I think it's important when you have something you want or an angle you're going for, that's not when you want to reach out. You want to reach out and build connections when you actually don't need anything in life, when you genuinely want to learn or meet people or just better yourself. So I think that's something I was good at where, sometimes I'd want to intern for somebody, but oftentimes it's just, can I pitch you a stock idea and get feedback from you and see where the conversation goes? I think I've been good at that, and this might be counterintuitive, but then post graduating college, I found, I sometimes try to go on trips and meet people. I'm always open to meeting people. But I think the best networking is doing cool work and putting it online. Whether you're a podcast host, that's fantastic networking. Going on podcasts as a guest, that's good networking. These listeners will reach out to you. Publishing a newsletter is great networking. I think at a certain point, especially as you get older, it's not so much as cold reaching out. Initiative is important, but it's doing interesting work, putting it on the internet, and that'll give you, a network that you can't get otherwise. So that's kind of how the shift has changed.
No, I love that. I mean, that speaks volumes to just like putting energy out there, like writing, whether it's a letter every week. That's honestly what's helped me out the most. I started with initially not knowing, okay, like how can I build this brand? How can I build the audience? How can I network with people? And for myself, just like being consistent and trying the best of my ability to write something that's thorough and good has helped me out. And also the second point too, right? Like you said, you and your roommate were reaching out to 100 different firms a week, right? And that speaks
Individuals,
volumes.
yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of times, sometimes people get discouraged of, let's say they'll reach out to 10 people on LinkedIn and then they're thinking, oh, maybe it's my template. But also, it's like having understanding of how much like volume you truly need to get the results that you wanted. And I think that's a testament. When I heard that story about the one that you went into the hedge fund and started DMing every individual on LinkedIn, I think most people will won't do that, right? Most people won't do that. So I think it's also very much like a just determination and numbers game too. Like if you reach out to 100, maybe only one person responds, but that one person you could connect with them and learn and keep growing from that. So I think that for me was just like, wow, man, that's honestly inspirational there. So now, Edwin, you have the bear cave letter, but you also have something else. It's you network with an investor. Is it every single week? I want you to like talk about that and tap into that right now a little bit too.
Yeah. And thank you. You've definitely done a lot of homework because most people only ask about Bear Cave. So the Bear
Yeah.
Cave newsletter is my main newsletter. It's read by a lot of short sellers, skeptics, journalists. I've got two other ventures that I'd love to maybe mention briefly. One is another newsletter called Sunday's Idea Brunch. This is a newsletter where twice a month, so roughly every other week, I'll publish a written interview with really smart up and coming investors. Typically, these are people under 40 who are typically managing less than $200 million. And my really only two criteria are I want to, only interview people I believe to be of high integrity. And I want to interview people who either have a history of outperformance or who I think are going to outperform going forward. So I publish these written interviews with really interesting off the beaten path investors. They're pretty similar. It's, more or less tell us about why you launched your firm, tell us about your research process, maybe one or two customized questions about your research process, pitch us a good idea. Where do you want to be in 10 years? Done. But I've really kind of enjoyed this newsletter because one, it's a great way for me to network with the guests. Now,
Mhm.
I get to know all these up and coming hedge fund managers a little. It's really fun to see their answers. I'm like, thank you for telling me all this wisdom. I get to get connected with the best people, and now I get to see about the research process. And the readership has grown to, I think, 14,000 free, 700 paid. It's typically paywalled halfway through, and it's kind of a win-win for everybody. It's great for the guests. It builds their exposure. It's great for me. I get to learn and I get a charge for the newsletter. And it's great for readers. You get off the beaten path stock picks. And a lot of allocators have used it to find up and coming talent. It's wild to me. Someone will get interviewed on it and they'll send me a screenshot and they'll say, "Did you know the head of St. Jude's or whatever endowment reads your thing and is not reaching out to me?" So it's another thing where if you have a niche and put it online, it can work. So it doesn't take a lot of time. That's the second venture. And then the third thing I've started to spend a lot of time on is building research websites or software tools to help people do research better. So you probably know this, but I have a website, stockpromotiontracker.com,
Mhm.
which I'm trying to build. It's the world's best database tracking paid stock promotions. And these research tools is what I kind of view as my second act and a bigger opportunity to build something really special.
Amazing. And then for the platforms, did you also make stopnasdaqchinafraud.com?
Yeah, so I have a website. This one's completely free, stopnasdaqchinafraud.com, where we talked about how scammers will use WhatsApp groups to communicate with victims. And I made a platform where you can just take a screenshot and upload it to a crowdsourced database so we can see in real time how the scammers work and what stocks they're promoting. I have another website, foiasearch.com, free again, that lets you navigate the SEC's FOIA logs, which are the FOIA requests the SEC gets, so you can see what people are requesting from them. So there's a lot of, I think, niche websites where I want to build something that doesn't exist helps a specific niche and see if it can be useful.
That's amazing, Edwin. So last question I have for you. In the next 5 years, like, what are you looking forward to in building in the bear cave and the morning brunch? Like, what is it that you're looking forward to? Like, what are you trying to achieve in the next 5 years?
I think the next 5 years, I really want two things to happen. Yeah, on a professional side, I want the Bear Cave newsletter to be the best newsletter at exposing corporate misconduct. It's not so much about the money I make from it. I just want it to be the dominant one. I want people to think, I want so many Americans to read it. I want it to have a big impact. I would like it if 5 years from now, when I criticize a company for some mispractice or harming consumers, a state AG uses that to launch an investigation or it gets more news coverage or it can actually be a change agent. Because right now, the only way I can be a change agent is if bigger journalists read my thing and then write about it, which has happened, but is rare. But I want to be able to have the newsletter be a change agent in society. So that's what I want for the barricade. And then I want to grow these software tools into a profitable and sustainable business that, serves some unique niche. So the stock promotion tracker, I think, is going to be really good, stockpromotiontracker.com. But I want to build out a suite of these tools that help any citizen and any individual do much better research on corporate misconduct in the world. So 5 years from now, I want to be, accomplishing those two things.
Amazing. Edwin, thank you so much for your time, man. I truly learned a lot today. For the audience that will watch this, I'm going to plug everything and anything you could find of Edwin on the bio. So make sure to go hit subscribe, check out the websites. And again, Edwin, really appreciate your time, man.
Thank you, Gabrielle.
All right. Cheers.